the settlement of the town, the farming industry of the town as it built up, and Candor today. So, the forming of the town, I said, well, I've always had an interest in kind of knowing how did the town of Candor end up being where it is, what it is today, the town of Candor. Said, so, I'll do that talk. Oh, little did I know. There's a lot goes into that, you know that? So anyway, I determined that if I was going to do it, I would want to make it as visual as possible so that you had something to look at, not just listen to dates and figures and what was formed out of what and so on. So I've spent a lot of time coming up, looking for maps and other things that would kind of give you the idea of what all happened that ended up eventually to be the forming of the town of Candor. And to do that, I started with exploration of America. And so with that, we'll see. Before I start, I do have some people to thank in helping me out in this. I've never done a PowerPoint project before, so that was a whole learning experience. But so I had help from a great deal of help from my pastor who works with it all the time. My college granddaughter helped me out. My son-in-law Steve helped me out. As far as that goes, as far as information that was provided, George Williams helped me out a great deal by providing me with a lot of material that he just, on his own, went to the county clerk's office and got and provided for me. So I thank him. There are also some reference materials that I used. Gay's Gazetteer was a great help. Ford County History by Pearson Hurd was a great help. John Weber has compiled a lot of that information in a couple of volumes he put out. I use those. But the major help, as far as the maps and so on are concerned, came from the internet. Thank you, Wikipedia. So, we'll see, as you can see, I put together a lot of material. We'll see how much I remember of it. So you'll bear with me if I have to cheat once in a while and refer to the material that I've got. Okay. The wrong thing. Oh, no, there we go. I think, there we go. All right. Forming of the town of Candor. Okay, I guess, bear with me. Can I use this?
No.
I can't use this. I need to use that. All right. To kind of get you oriented, obviously you recognize this, where we live, state of New York. But the reason I put it up there is so that you kind of have a picture in your mind as to what we're going to be talking about as we look at the transactions that took place over the years that eventually ended up being this state. This is a depiction of all of the counties in the state as they exist today. So obviously what exists today took a great deal of transactions and manipulations in order to come up with these counties. This is the county that we live in today. That's how this ended up to be in this form, in this shape, with these towns. Just so you're familiar with the county that we have. and the town of Candor, as it exists today. So that's just to kind of give you an orientation as to where we're going. All right, starting out with exploration and claims, and I've only used a few of these. There were many, many voyages to this country over the years. These are depicted because they represent the major European nations that really sent expeditions to this country in very early exploration. Obviously, we're all familiar with Columbus, 1492. Even though he did not ever come to the mainland of America, he did find the New World, which was sailing west and until he ran into land. 1497, Cabot came from England, and he's really the one that first explored the whole, or a good share of the coastline of what we now call America. 1497, and he claimed the land for England. Columbus claimed whatever land he found for Spain. Verrazano in 1524, again, came basically in the southern part of the country, but he claimed the land that he discovered for France. And then Henry Hudson in 1609 sailed mainly, or one of the first voyages he had was up the Hudson River, and he claimed that land for the New Netherlands for Holland. There were many, many other voyages in this particular era. There had not been much as far as far-ranging exploration in ships, but as the ability to build better ships and to navigate better occurred, more exploration took place. There were a couple of other things. Obviously, they were looking for the Northwest Passage to China. There was an overland route already, but there were some problems in the overland trek with the Ottoman Turks, and so they were looking for another way to get to China. They thought maybe there was a way by sailing west they could reach it. Religious persecution also played a part in the desire to explore and to settle in new lands. So that played a part early on after the discovery of the era of people wanting to move in and settle in the new land. Okay, early days. As these European countries especially claimed the land in this new world, they gave grants to various organizations and individuals in the land that they claimed for their own. And here's a couple of the early ones. Actually, the bottom one, 1534, was the first province in New France that was actually given as a grant. 1606, the Plymouth Grant, James I, King of England, granted a portion of land between the 40th and the 48th north latitude, and I'll show you where that is in a second. 1614, the New Amsterdam Charter. A patent was given for commercial trade, mainly along the Hudson River, as Hudson had claimed that area for Holland. There was another grant, well, there were two grants. The Plymouth Grant, excuse me, was this huge area, and I'll show you. In 1606, in 1620, the king gave the organization, the group of men that have formed the Plymouth colony organization, gave them permission to trade that land or to give title to some of that land to other individuals. So there are two grants there that came out of the Plymouth grant. The Massachusetts Bay Grant, which basically is, and I'll show you from the Merrimack River in the north to the Charles River in the south, and then another grant in 1630, the Connecticut grant, also part of that grant, which is south of the Massachusetts Bay Grant. So let's look at it. This, you can see the Plymouth grant, the green line up there, and the green line down here. That is the whole original Plymouth grant. This was the Massachusetts Bay Colony grant. That was the first grant was given. And then the Connecticut grant is this grant down here. Now basically, when they gave a grant, the title was for the land from here, from sea to sea, even though they didn't know how far that was. It was given as a total grant across however big the nation was or the country was. From sea to sea, that grant was given. There are a lot of other things on here too, but basically that's what I wanted to show you on this map is what those early grants were and where they apply, because they play a part later on in the division of the land. This is a depiction. I put this in because I wanted to show you how much France really had claimed as far as New France. Now this is a little later on, 1750, but all of this, you can't tell the colors real well, but all of this area is France. This area is Great Britain. These were lands that were ceded to Great Britain by France in 1713. And then down here are the Spanish possessions. So I just want to show you that to show you the extent of the land that they claimed, the France claimed at that time for New France. Okay, 1664. King of England, Charles II, granted to his brother, James, the Duke of York and Albany, the area that basically comprises New York State plus, and I'll show you in a minute. The territory included all of New Jersey, what is presently New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Vermont, and inland portions of Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, and eastern Pennsylvania. So this grant to the Duke of York was a large grant covering the area that we're talking about, the area that we live in. Later on, we find that the Dutch surrendered their, and I'll show you that later, but they surrendered their area of the Netherlands to England. And, well, they didn't do it willfully. In 1664, when the grant was given to James, Duke of York, he immediately brought a huge armada of warships, because at this time the Dutch not only were settled in the Hudson Valley, but also Long Island and Manhattan area. They had lived there for some time, very decently, and liked their freedoms. But in 1664, the Duke of York decided he was going to claim the whole land for himself. It showed up with a bunch of warships. The people in the New Netherlands area said, we don't want to fight. We'd rather we retain our freedoms. They had guaranteed you can live as you've been living. We gave you the same freedoms that you've been enjoying, excuse me. And so, in lieu of that, the Dutch said, all right, we're gonna surrender our area here in New Netherlands to you, England, and to the Duke of York for the province of New York. Okay. Out of this province, it was huge, and I'll show you a little bit of it. In 1772, now this is 100 years after this, Tryon County is set off from Albany County. Province of New York was made up of 12 different counties when it was formed. And as you see, most of them were right up along the coastline. But Albany County was a huge county that took up pretty much all the rest of the land of what we can think of as New York right now.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Okay, province of New York, this shows you a little bit. Of what, you see the boundary of the original charter, 1664, I'm sorry you can't see it real well, but it includes all of this, and all of this. So that whole area comprised, at that time, in 1664, the province of New York. But you can see there's lots of other claims on there, and we'll talk about some of those later. But basically, what I wanted to show you is where the province of New York, what the area of the province of New York at that time covered. Okay, as I said, 1772, out of that, Tryon County was created. Tryon County went from the Mohawk River to the Canadian line to Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, south of Pennsylvania. It was divided into 5 districts. Now, Tryon County was separated out of Albany County, so when it was created, it was given to William. It was named for William Tryon. It was a grant to him, so he was basically the governor of that province. He actually, in 1772, he ended up being the last governor of that province. But you can see the districts, how they were named: Mohawk, Palatine, Candor, German Flats, and Kingsland. This is a picture of how big Tryon County was. That's Canada, there's Pennsylvania line. You can't see it real well. Come over here. This area over here, you see is the country of the 6 nations, that's Indian country. That was set apart so that with an agreement with the Sioux, that they would not settle, so that was avoided. So the line comes down here, and Albany County was over here. This is more of a line drawing of a map that shows you a little bit more about how it was comprised. This is Tryon County, this is Albany County. So Albany County originally was all of that. Washington County, Ulster, Orange, and Dutchess. And again, this is Indian territory out here, and they, per agreement with the natives, they would not settle in that area. right, getting ahead of myself. State sessions. As I said, most of the boundaries between the colonies were established at the time of the American Revolution, but there were just a lot of disputes over who owned the territory. As you can see on that other map, there are a lot of claims for the same area. At the end of the Revolution, 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed. It formally ended the Revolutionary War and established sovereignty over the land between the Appalachians and the Mississippi River. So now England has no part, no ownership of this territory after the Revolution. From 1782 to 1802, there were a lot of areas that were various, at this time, were colonies, now they're states, claimed. And those areas, in order to resolve who actually owned them, a lot of the states ceded their area to the government, to the U.S. government, for them to make the decision as to where the land should go, who it should go to. This is a depiction of a lot of those areas that were contested. Some of the states that claimed some of this territory were very willing to cede them over to the U.S. government, because the U.S. government at that time said, we'll pay your Revolutionary War debts. A lot of the states, territories had considerable debt. So some of the cedes were for their own benefit to reduce their debt. Others were just decided as to who should actually own it. So just a few of them. Remember I talked about the Massachusetts grant. Okay, Massachusetts charter included this, the Connecticut charter included that. You can now reaffirm the left side we have claimed by Massachusetts resolved in section 96. Claimed by Connecticut resolved in section.
You're getting the feedback.
All right. Okay. But there were a lot of these areas, you can, just by glancing at it, you can see all the way across the whole country. There were disputed areas, and by, what's the latest? They were ceded to the U.S. government. So now we have a better picture of how the states were formed, who owns them. Okay, New York now has resolved a lot of their territory disputes, so now the state of New York is pretty much defined. Tryon County was basically, even though it was named for Tryon, he never really governed the territory. It was really governed by Sir William Johnson. And during the Revolutionary War, Johnson, he was a great ally of the Indians. So a lot of the Sioux Nation tribes fought with England against the Patriots. And after William Johnson died and his son took over, and with his alliance with another colonel, and I'm sure Grant, who was the head of the Sioux tribe, they created and committed a lot of very horrendous abuses and slaughters of some of the bordering or outlying settlements. So there was a lot of there were some massacres and some brutal treatment. So after the Revolutionary War, what was called Tryon County was now renamed. It was renamed from Montgomery, who was a general who had fought for the Patriots. He was killed at Quebec, trying to take Quebec during the Revolutionary War, so they renamed the county Montgomery. But now, because England and the Indian nations no longer had control or power, Montgomery County now includes a whole lot more than what Tryon County did. 1789, and I'll show you this, Ontario County was split off. It covered 12 counties in the western part of the state and parts of 2 others. In 1791, 3 more counties were split off of Montgomery County. One of them is Tioga County. Between 1802 and 1838, several more reductions in Montgomery County were made, leaving Montgomery County the way it is today, which is a very small county by Albany. Okay, this shows a little bit. Montgomery County now included all of it. And this is where Ontario County was taken off of that and formed the whole west and really took up all of the counties that now exist in the western part of the state. And these are the rest of the counties in the state as it was defined. Later on, more divisions were made, and things changed very quickly. A lot more counties were created. Excuse me. And here's Tioga County down here, okay, which is the one that we're interested in. So you can see there were lots of counties. A lot of them were very large, and obviously got divided up over time. But the one we're interested in is Tioga. And notice. Okay, Tioga County. 1791, Tioga County was split off of Montgomery County, and it was divided into 5 towns. And I'll show you them. And these are all of the splits off of the Tioga County. 1794, a section was taken off to form Onondaga County. 1798, section taken off to form Shenango County. 1806, Broome County was split off of Tioga County. 1822, a section was taken off to help form Tompkins County, or added to Tompkins County. And part of what had been split off to form Broome County was now put back onto Tioga County in 1822. 1836, another section was taken off to form Chemung County. So let's see what this looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. These are the towns that existed in 1791 as, Tioga County was formed. Notice, Chemung is that whole 4th Street side. Town of Owego is on the other side of Owego Creek, Union, Shenango, and Jericho. Okay. Just to show you a little bit more what area that covered, I put this on the county map, the present county map, and outlined it. So that's how much Tioga County originally covered when it was first formed. This is another map, just because it's a neat map. What Watkins and Smith purchased, we'll talk about that a little more later, but all of this area formed, the county of Tioga. This happened to be was printed out to show the military, but we'll talk about that later too. this is a little clearer, it's the bottom section of that map. 10 townships granted Massachusetts, we'll talk about that a little bit. So here, Jointown is down here now, below Washington, between Purchase and the Pennsylvania line. Another map, pretty much showing this, the same thing, only this gives you a little better depiction of the military track, and I'll show you a little better picture of that later. And here you can see this is all county of Toyota.
You're getting feedback again.
Has something to do with where you are over there.
Yeah, it doesn't like to hear the screen.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
not, in front of the projector. Okay, and then again, this is the same map, only it's a little exploded view of the very bottom portion of it. You can see the Watkins and Flint Purchase in this case. I don't know if you can read them very well, but it was divided into 10 sections, 12 sections, I'm sorry, from left to right. Over, and 11 and 12 are on the end, with 12 being next to Wheel Creek. 11 and 12 next to Wheel Creek. It's a military track that was set aside in the northern part of the state for the Revolutionary War veterans. They were promised land in order, in lieu of pay, for fighting in the Revolutionary War. They set aside this area, and I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this. Because I don't remember all the facts. So where to find it. Okay. Watkins and Flint purchased about 300,000 acres. They made application to the New York Commission of Land Office in 1791, and they were granted in 1794. And it went from, and we'll talk about this later, west of the preemption line that separates the Phelps-Gorham Purchase, and okay. Originally part of Tioga County, includes parts of Schuyler, Chemung, Tioga, Tompkins, the towns of Newfield, Danby, Caroline, and part of Dryden. Anyway, that, just to kind of give you an idea of what the rest of the state, that portion of the state, what they did with that, that was all set aside for military, for veterans, and they were granted land for that. Okay, 1791. This is Tioga County as it was originally formed. Okay, I talked about it before, and I'm going to show you the areas that were taken off of the county to form other parts. Okay, this is the part that was taken off first. This was taken off. Okay. This was taken off. Okay. Part of it was restored back to Tioga County, and the other section was taken off. And finally, the last section was taken off, leaving Tioga County as it exists today. Okay. Now, there were a whole lot of things that happened in between. As far as dividing the county up, and truthfully, I read it, but it's not easy to understand. So I'm not gonna try and explain it to you all, but the town as it was, and George can probably tell a whole lot more about this than me, but anyway, eventually, the remaining part of the county was divided up, and Spencer was one of the major towns that was left out of that division. Excuse me. You can see here, excuse me, there's Tioga County. This is the current map of the towns, of the way they exist today. It includes, as you can see, Caroline, Danby, Newfield, and more than just Tioga County. That's Tompkins and, come on. But those are the towns that exist, as they exist today. This is what the town of Spencer was comprised of at that time. You can see Caroline, Danby, Newfield, Candor, Spencer, and Manhattan were all part of the town of Spencer in 1811. Those towns, you know, this is just to show you part of Tompkins County. Caroline, Danby, and Newfield, the parts that were taken off and given, made part of Tompkins County. I only have one that shows Manhattan, so. But this is in here just as a neat map. It just shows more of the counties. So we come down to 1811. All of those towns were divided out of the town of Spencer. Set aside, Candor was set aside in February. Wait a second. And I put this up just to show you, to give you an idea of how this was written in the law. This came directly out of the laws of New York, 1811. The act of dividing the town of Spencer into 5 towns, and it was passed February 22nd. Just to give you an idea of how they described the boundaries when they laid these out, and they described this in the law for all of the towns that were separated out of the town of Spencer. So I don't expect you to read it all, but just to give you an idea of how they determined where those lines would end up. And as you can see, the first town meeting of said town should be held in the house of Abel Hartz. Well, obviously its name isn't Hartz, it's Hart, but that's the way it is in the law. That brings us down again to the town of Candor as it exists today. Divided out of Spencer, 1811, 200 years ago, and we're celebrating the bicentennial of that event this year. Okay, now, any other questions? Any questions I can't answer? I do have some other information. You might be interested in we talked about the preemption line. The preemption line refers to the right of Massachusetts to receive and negotiate with the Indians, and that was all part of that Massachusetts grant. They negotiated. They said, Massachusetts, you have the right to that piece of property to negotiate with the Indians, but anyone that is living in the area is a New York State citizen. And the preemption was it preempted New York State and also preemptive rights of the two state governments with respect to individuals who were forbidden to negotiate directly with the Indians without first securing a patent from their respective legislature. And the same thing was true of the 10 towns. Again, that was awarded to Massachusetts. They in turn sold that. Anyway, the 10 towns, that's east of Tyler County, and the same thing was true there. They were awarded that area, and then they in turn sold it off to a group who then divided up into the 10 towns. So, okay, there we have it. That's why we have the town of Candor as it exists today. Hopefully it gives you a little broader picture of all the things that happened, even though there's not a lot of detail. All the things that happened from the time of exploration of this country down to where we sit today in these boundary lines.
Who governed the town of Candor in 1811? What was the political setup? Who was in charge? Nobody?
Well,
Like today?
Yeah, they had the first meeting.
You wanna know who the elected officials were? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay, give me just a second, let me check my book here.
Which are available for sale.
That's part of
Page
what,
207,
207.
I can tell you in a sec.
I haven't bought my book yet.
I'm sorry, that's the people that are today.
that isn't part of what I copied out. I can't say.
Yeah, I understand. I just wondered who was,
Milt, let me ask you a question. Who was the big keeper of the grant book? I mean, everybody was giving grants to everybody at any time. I mean, where was the monster grant book that says, oops, that guy's got one and one hasn't got one? What did grants really mean?
There wasn't a monster grant. It was all held in the individual countries. They gave charters, so you had some documentation that you could show that, hey, England granted me this territory back in 1638 or
Yeah,
whatever.
but Holland granted it to me with this charter. Same piece.
Right, and that's why they had so many disputes, as the one map showed, all the way down the whole country. States claimed areas all the way out to the Mississippi River.
So until the federal government got involved, there
Right.
was no
Yes,
monster grant book.
yeah.
Now, the Watkins print purchase comprised a large part of the southern tier here, and it divided it into sections, and they sold them as sections. But what I never did understand is, in those sections, they were divided by 52-acre lots. You could buy 10 52-acre lots or whatever. Where did that ever in the world come from?
George?
There's 12 townships, and they were all divided differently. There's, I think, 4 investors in the Watkins purchase, and they divvied up the towns into by investor. So the investor assessed the land the way it was formed, as far as the valleys and the hills, the rivers, and decided each separate town is divided differently. There is no, they all have a different pattern. Okay, you might be talking about 52-acre lots. In other areas, there's 102-acre lots. In another township, it would be completely different. Sometimes they're rectangular, sometimes they're square. They had, each township was given under the authority of a land agent, and that agent decided how the best way to divide that land, to make it marketable, to the pioneers.
So he's the guy that set all the boundaries east and west, and north and south?
And, like, for example, everybody's heard of James. Right, well, he came to Owego with 50 cents in his pocket and that. And he got on a survey crew, and he, worked his way up to become a land agent, and he became very wealthy. Just, being able to assess the land or its value. In Owego, there's a survey book of Cox Patton. It's a similar type land subdivision as Watkins and Flint, but much smaller. And in that field book, it describes the mets and bounds for each lot as they divide out the lots. But it also described the type of soil for that lot, the type of timber that was on that lot, whether the land was extremely steep or whether it was a modest grade, whether there were creeks through the lot, all those types of things. And those reports went back to the investors as they marketed that property.
It's on our farm.
The neighbor, yeah, and Watkins Club purchase would have done, a lot of records have been lost from the county clerk's office. And so some things like in the Watkins Club purchase areas, and they covered a lot of towns too.
Yeah.
So not only they might be lost, but they might be somewhere in a closet that nobody knows about. Because, as counties, like Milt explained, how the counties were divided up. Well, the records were here when it was this county, and now it's part of another county, so where are the records for that town now? So that's where this would come into play. So, but there's no, the best way, if you were to look at an atlas from 1869, you can see the different shapes of the lots, and you can see that they don't all form the same pattern.
Now, was McMaster granted that a half section for service in the Revolution?
He was granted, I don't know if it had anything to do with the revolution or not, as far as the service with the revolution. I know he was granted that land because he was friendly with the Indians.
Okay, and now that.
The Indians wouldn't sign off on that until, he was awarded half of that in Masters Township. There's two halves, east and west. He was granted the west half, and the east half went to somebody else. But the Indians would not sign off on that land until that was taken in.
Okay, now that predates the Washington Flint, that was part of the land that they bought up, or how's that?
It was all in the same time frame.
Yeah.
I don't really, I honestly don't remember the specific date for the Masters Township. The Washington Flint probably started out at the same time, but it was a larger tract. And it took longer for it to get subdivided and marketed.
McMaster's was 1785 time, and there's a historic marker over on the Honeypot Road because he's supposedly very voted there. But he was a pioneer and revolutionary soldier,
Okay.
and he was granted the title of McMaster Half Township. There's a section in my book,
It's in the book.
historic markers in Candor.
When you take a look at some of the things up here on the table, and a current New York State map, I drew what town the county was originally laid out to be. And this is the Fort Stanwix preemption line that defined where you could settle and where you couldn't settle. In other words, you were, in those years, the white settlers were forbidden to settle in this area over here because that was Indian territory. So anyway, you can take a look at some of these things.
Don't mix with the Indians,
Kick them all out.
Yeah, we got it eventually, right? We sent them all up to Syracuse.
That's my presentation for the evening. That's where we get the town of Candor, how town of Candor was formed, which is basically what I started out to approve and took me,
One question.
yeah,
I recall some years ago, we were talking about names in this area and how they came to be, and at that time, I think there was no understanding of how the name ever, where this came from. In your recent studies, have you determined how we came up with the name of Candor?
no,
Okay.
nobody that I know of has come up. Tioga was the junction of point, of two rivers. The Indian name basically meant junction, but Candor, no. They originally wanted to call it Washington, but Washington was already taken. So,
Good job, Mel.
all right, please,
Before, excuse me, before we break
Oh.
for refreshments,
thank you.
Like a legislator, I guess. I was a legislator for 9 years. This is signed by Dale Weston, who's the chair of the legislature. And it reads such. Whereas the town of Candor was officially established on March 4th, 1811, as acted upon by the state senate and assembly, and officially became a separate town the first Monday in March. It was decreed that the town was to be known by the name of Candor, and that the first town meeting was to be held at the house of Abel Hart. And whereas the first official town of Candor meeting took place on Tuesday, March 5th, 1811, at the Hart home, currently the Masonic Lodge number 411 of the Free and Accepted Masons. And whereas today Candor has a population of around 5,139, and of that 789 live in the village. Candor is the third largest town in Tioga County, population-wise, but the largest land-wise. Candor, as well as Spencer, has the highest percentage of diversity of people at 4%. This includes Black, African American, American Indian, and Alaska Native, Asian, Native Hawaiian, and other Pacific Islander and Hispanic. I don't know where all those came from. And whereas Candor is all about the people, whether they come together for a school function, sports function, a church function, or one of the many fraternal or social club or organizational events, it's all about people helping people and people enjoying life. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Tioga County Legislature, County of Tioga, does hereby proclaim February 23rd, 2011, Town of Candor Bicentennial Celebration in the County of Tioga, New York, and urge all citizens to actively participate in the scheduled activities and programs during the year 2011. Dated February 23rd, 2011, Dale Weston, Chair of the Tioga County Legislature.
Town Candor is important to our community in that the foundation of the town and its residents is shaped by events and people from our past. And whereas 200 years ago, the leaders and fathers of our community assembled and saw it fitting to form the town of Candor as a portion from the existing town of Spencer to better represent and protect the rights and interests of the residents. And whereas March 2011 represents the 200th anniversary of the setting aside by law of the town of Candor, and whereas in Candor we are interested in celebrating and recognizing this significant anniversary, now therefore I, Darlene Kobler, Supervisor of the town of Candor, Tioga County, New York, do hereby proclaim the year 2011 as the Candor Bicentennial Celebration in Candor. I urge all residents to participate in the celebratory events and enjoy the rich history of this town. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the town of Candor to be affixed on the 8th day of February in the year 2011.
This is in the little pamphlet that goes with the half cans.
Better put on a bike.
Everything is blurred, whoops.
Maybe there's too many out there.
Everything is blurred without it. Okay. A word about Candor's name. A word about Candor's name, is that okay?
Yeah.
Most towns, villages, hamlets, and so forth know or at least have reasonable legends of how they got their names. However, Candor, New York, and Candor, North Carolina, did you know there was a Candor?
Yeah, if you go to AccuWeather, it will come up.
Are among those places that have no definite name origin. According to Gay's Gazetteer, 1888, one Thomas Gridley was given the honor of naming Candor, in quotes, aside with no explanation of why he chose, in quotes, that name, end aside. This seems unlikely, inasmuch as the town was not officially formed from Spencer until 1811, and the settlers at Owego, in quotes, must have had a name for the locality some 20 years before that, and 6 or 7 years before the first white settlers arrived in Candor, in quotes, in 1794. There were still a few Indians living in the vicinity of Owego when the first settlers arrived there about 1787. And these natives, in quotes, no doubt had a name for the unusual geographic features of the Catatonk Valley close to the present Candor village. This idea is borne out by comments made by a Cornell University, quote, Indian language expert, end quote, who was quite certain the name Candor was derived from an Indian word that meant bend in the river, or perhaps in this case, bend in the valley. The valley coming southerly from Wilseyville joins the valley coming easterly from Spencer and abruptly bends 90 degrees to the south toward Owego. The Indians would certainly have named such a unique land feature. It is also possible that Candor is a phonetic spelling of a shortened version of the original Indian word. This theory, and that's my theory, is supported by the fact that a number of place names in New York State were derived from Indian words or phrases that had the prefix can, C-A-N, da-da-da. These include Canadice, Canajahari, Canandaigua, Canasuraga, Canastota, Cansarcy, Caniadia, Canasteo, and Canova. I think that's enough to give you an idea. This prefix probably meant the place where. In the case of our Candor, we can easily imagine that the original Indian name meant the place where the valley makes a sharp bend. Even so, the truth of how Candor got its name will remain conjecture.